Hey guys, tonight we are venturing deep into a place where the trees are older than kingdoms and the silence is so profound you can hear your own heartbeat. We're stepping into the primeval forests of Eastern Europe, a world of deep green shadows, thick carpets of moss, and ancient, watchful eyes. You're about to meet the guardian of this realm, a creature as shy as he is powerful, as gentle as he is wild. So, if you feel a sudden chill or the unnerving sensation of being watched on your next hike, you'll know who to thank. You probably won't survive the encounter, but at least you'll be informed. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let us know in the comments where you re-listening from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see where our little community gathers from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You take a hesitant step off the worn dirt track, and instantly, the world changes. The air grows cooler, heavier, thick with the scent of damp earth, decaying leaves, and the sharp, clean fragrance of pine. It's a perfume 1,000 years in the making. Above you, the canopy is a dense tapestry of green and gold, so thick that the afternoon sun is reduced to a soft, ethereal twilight, dappling the forest floor in shifting patterns of light. You are now in his house. There's no welcome mat, no doorbell to ring. The only announcement of your arrival is the soft crunch of leaves under your boots and the sudden hush that falls over the woods. This isn't just any forest. This is a remnant of the old world, a place that mirrors the great Białowieża forest, which straddles the border between Poland and Belarus. This is one of the last true primeval forests in Europe, a place where bison still roam and oaks that were saplings during the Middle Ages stand like silent, gnarled giants. It's in a place like this, untouched and untamed, that the old ways and the old things linger. You feel it in your bones. The sheer scale of the trees is humbling. Their trunks are colossal pillars, coated in a velvet skin of moss and decorated with shelves of woody fungi. Looking up, you might notice a curious phenomenon known as crown shyness, where the topmost branches of the tallest trees don't quite touch, leaving delicate, river-like channels of sky above. It's a natural occurrence, but here it feels like a deliberate act of courtesy. The trees giving each other just a little bit of breathing room. It's a community, and you've just walked into the middle of it. You press on deeper into the green gloom. The sounds of the modern world, the distant hum of traffic, the faint whine of a plane, have completely vanished. They can't penetrate this deep. The silence that replaces them isn't empty. It's layered, textured. There's the gentle sigh of wind through the high branches, the distant territorial tap-tap-tap of a woodpecker, the scuttling of some small, unseen creature in the undergrowth. But underneath it all, there's a profound, listening quiet. The forest itself feels aware, a single, sprawling consciousness made of a billion leaves and roots. You get the distinct impression that you are being assessed, your intentions weighed. Folklorists still argue whether the oldest spirits of the wood were seen as truly malevolent or simply indifferent to human affairs, much like a person is indifferent to an ant, unless that ant decides to bite. You are a guest here, and a fragile one at that. Your thin jacket is poor armor against a sudden drop in temperature. Your sense of direction, so reliable in the gridded streets of a city, is utterly useless here, where every tree looks like the last and every direction is just another shade of green and brown. It would be so easy to get lost. Not just miss your turn lost, but profoundly, existentially lost, swallowed by the woods. This is the domain of the one they call Leshi. The name itself comes from the Slavic word les, meaning forest. He is the forest, and the forest is him. You haven't seen him yet. You haven't heard him. But he has certainly seen and heard you. Every step you take is a vibration felt through his root-like nerves. Every breath you exhale a tiny cloud in his ancient air. You stop for a moment, resting a hand on the rough bark of a towering pine. The bark is cool, almost cold, and feels strangely like wrinkled skin. For a fleeting second, you imagine you can feel a slow, deep pulse thrumming within the wood, a heartbeat impossibly vast and patient. It's probably just your imagination. Probably. The path you thought you were following has subtly dissolved into a carpet of pine needles and moss, leaving you to wonder if it was ever really there at all. A sense of unease, gentle but persistent, begins to prickle at the back of your neck. It's not fear, not yet. It's more like the feeling you get when you walk into a room and sense you've just interrupted a conversation. The forest is watching, waiting, and its master, the shy, mossy, and gentle guardian, is deciding what to make of you. He is the spirit of this wild place, the warden of its trees and the shepherd of its beasts. Your presence here is a curiosity, a brief and clumsy interruption to a slow green eternity, and he is about to make his presence known. You stand perfectly still, straining your ears against the layered silence. The decision to leave the path now seems monumentally foolish. Your internal compass, usually a reliable friend, is spinning uselessly. Every direction looks the same, an impenetrable wall of green and brown, 1,000 trees standing shoulder to shoulder. That's when you hear it. The first clear, deliberate sound that doesn't belong. It's a bird call, a simple 3-note whistle. It's sharp, melodious, and impossibly close. You scan the nearby branches for a flash of feathers, a flicker of movement, but see nothing. The forest remains still, a painted backdrop. Then the call comes again, but this time from your left. It's identical, the same pitch, the same rhythm, yet it has moved 30 feet in an instant without the slightest rustle of wings. This is the beginning of his game. He's a shy host, you see. He rarely appears to guests straight away. He prefers to test the air, to gauge your temperament, and his favorite way to do this is with sound. The forest's surround sound system is, you have to admit, second to none. A twig snaps behind you with a crack like a pistol shot. It's heavy, the sound of a significant weight being put down. You whip your head around, expecting a wild boar, or perhaps one of those ancient bison, but there is nothing. Only a thicket of ferns, motionless and serene. A soft breeze picks up, whispering through the pines, and for a moment it sounds like a voice, a sibilant murmur just at the edge of hearing. You can't make out any words. It's like listening to a conversation through a thick wall. Anthropologists debate whether these tales of mimicry were simple personifications of forest echoes, or a genuine belief in a spirit capable of intelligent deception. But as you stand here, a knot of cold dread tightening in your stomach, the academic distinction feels rather pointless. The bird call comes a third time, but now it's different. It has lost its animal quality. It's the clear, perfect whistle of a person, someone who has practiced that little tune 1,000 times. It's cheerful, carefree, and utterly terrifying in this context. You are not alone, and whatever is with you knows you are there. You begin to walk, picking a direction at random, hoping to stumble back toward the trail. Your boots sink into the plush, damp carpet of moss. Speaking of which, you recall a quirky piece of old folklore your grandmother might have told you. Forget the idea that moss only grows on the north side of a tree. The old tales claim that in these ancient forests, the moss grows thickest on the side of the tree facing the heart of the woods, towards the Leshy's domain. It's his way of marking his territory, a subtle signpost for those who know how to read it. You glance at the trees around you, but the moss seems to coat them on all sides in a thick green velvet, offering no clue, no comfort. The forest keeps its secrets well. Then comes the laughter. It's not loud, it's a faint giggling chuckle, like that of a small child playing hide and seek. It seems to bubble up from the ground itself before dancing away through the trees. You freeze, every muscle tensed. Your rational mind scrambles for an explanation, a trick of the wind, a strange animal cry. But your gut knows better. The sound was too clean, too intelligent. You are being toyed with, your reactions carefully observed. You call out, "Hello?" and your voice sounds thin and foolish, instantly swallowed by the immense quiet. The only reply is another giggle, this time seemingly from directly above your head. You look up, past the dizzying web of branches, but see only those channels of sky you noticed earlier. The experience is profoundly disorienting. It plays on a fundamental human vulnerability, our reliance on predictable patterns. A sound should have a source. An object should not move without a cause. This was a core part of the old Slavic worldview, this balance between a recognizable order or pravda and a chaotic, unpredictable force or krivda. The Leshi exists in that chaotic space. He doesn't follow the rules of your world. Here, in his world, he makes the rules. And the first rule is that your senses cannot be trusted. You pull out your phone, a desperate modern reflex. Of course, there's no signal. The screen glows for a moment, showing you a map of absolutely nothing, a blue dot adrift in a sea of green before you turn it off. It is now just a very expensive and unhelpful black rectangle. The Leshi, you imagine, finds this hilarious. Another little toy from a world that has no power here. The whispers return, louder this time, and you can almost make out a word, your own name perhaps, stretched and distorted as if carried on the wind from a great distance. It's a gentle pull, a subtle invitation to walk deeper into the woods, to follow the sound, to find its source. It's a lure and you know it, but knowing and resisting are two very different things. You decide to stand your ground, to resist the siren call of your own whispered name. Moving deeper into this bewildering maze of trees feels like the worst possible choice. You need a moment to think, to let the panic subside. You spot a particularly massive oak, a true patriarch of the forest, its trunk thick and reassuringly solid. You walk over and lean your back against it, closing your eyes for just a second, taking a deep breath of the cool, loamy air. Leaning on something so permanent is usually a good strategy for grounding yourself, unless, of course, the permanent thing decides to move. At first, it's just a feeling, a subtle warmth seeping through your jacket from the bark, a strange sensation when the air is so chilly. You dismiss it. Then, you feel a slow, deep vibration, like the purring of some colossal cat. It's not just in your back, but in the soles of your feet, a thrumming that seems to rise from the roots of the world. And then, the tree shifts. It's a ponderous, heavy movement, an inch to the left, accompanied by a sound like grinding stone and tearing moss. Your eyes snap open. You push yourself away from the trunk, stumbling backward a few steps, your heart hammering against your ribs. You turn and face the tree, trying to understand what just happened. The twilight of the forest plays tricks on the eyes, but this is no trick. What you had mistaken for a gnarled, mossy trunk is something else entirely. It is a figure, immensely tall and broad. It has the shape of a man, but it is made of the very substance of the forest. Its skin is the cracked gray bark of an ancient oak. Its long, tangled beard is not hair, but a cascade of green and silver lichen that hangs to its waist. Strands of ivy climb its arms like living veins, and a cluster of pale, ghostly mushrooms sprouts from one shoulder. You can see now why you mistook it for a tree. It stood so still, so perfectly blended with its surroundings that it was, for all intents and purposes, a part of the landscape. Then it turns its head, the motion slow and ancient, and you see its face. Two deep-set hollows burn with a soft green phosphorescent light, like foxfire or decaying wood. They are its eyes, and they are fixed on you with an unnerving, unblinking curiosity. Its nose is a great gnarled knot of wood, and when its mouth opens slightly, you see not teeth, but something that looks like rows of hard, dry acorns. Most of our modern knowledge of this being comes from the work of 19th century folklorists like Alexander Afanasyev, who meticulously collected the peasant tales of old Russia. In those stories, the Leshi was rarely described in detail, but when he was, it was always with this fusion of man and wood, a true elemental. You notice other strange details. His feet are not quite human, ending in something more like gnarled roots or even cloven hooves. Historians still argue whether the depiction of forest spirits with horns and hooves was an authentic pre-Christian feature, or a later addition influenced by Christian iconography of the devil. Looking at him now, it's easy to see how the stories could get tangled. He wears a rough woven coat, but it's buttoned the wrong way, right over left. And his shoes, which look like they're woven from birch bark, are on the wrong feet. The left shoe on the right foot, the right on the left. This inversion is a classic sign of a creature from the other world, a place where everything is a mirror image of our own. His entire being is a quiet declaration that he is not of your kind, and perhaps the most unsettling feature of all, as he stands there, bathed in the dappled forest light, you realize he casts no shadow. The light touches him, illuminates the texture of his bark skin and mossy beard, but it passes through him as if he isn't fully there, leaving no darkness on the ground behind him. He just watches you. The whispers and laughter are gone. The world is utterly silent now, save for your own ragged breathing. His expression is unreadable, not angry, not welcoming. It is the ancient, patient expression of the forest itself. Curiosity. He is simply looking at the strange, soft, fleeting little creature that has wandered into his home. The green glow of his eyes is surprisingly gentle, a far cry from the monstrous red eyes of so many other bogeymen. It's more of a biological nightlight, really. And in this moment of silent, terrifying wonder, you feel that your life is balanced on a knife's edge, entirely in the hands of this mossy, breathing piece of the ancient world. The two of you stand locked in this silent tableau for what feels like an eternity. Your fear has cooled into a kind of numb, breathless awe. You are looking at something that shouldn't exist, a being pulled from the pages of a forgotten storybook. He is immense, but it is his age you feel most acutely. An ancient, geological patience radiates from him. You are a fleeting curiosity, a flicker of warmth in his long, cool green existence. And then, he breaks the silence not with a voice, but with a sound. A low, deep groaning, like the roots of the earth shifting, like the sound of a great ship's timbers under strain. And he begins to grow. It's not a sudden magical burst. It is a slow, organic, and utterly impossible expansion. His bark-like skin cracks and fissures, new growth filling the gaps in an instant. His limbs elongate. His torso widens. The ivy and moss on his body spread to cover the new surface area. It's a growth spurt that makes puberty look like a minor rounding error. Within seconds, he is taller than you by a head, then two. He doesn't stop. He continues his silent, inexorable ascent, the creaking of his wooden bones filling the air. Soon, his head disappears into the lower branches of the canopy, rustling the leaves as he passes through them. He just keeps going, rising like a living column of wood and foliage. This ability connects him to one of the most powerful symbols in ancient Slavic and indeed all Proto-Indo-European belief systems, the concept of the world tree, the axis mundi. This was the cosmic pillar that connected the earth to the heavens, a bridge between worlds. As you watch the Leshi grow, you realize you are seeing a living embodiment of that myth. He isn't just in the forest. He is the forest, and he can be as large as it. His glowing green eyes are now distant stars looking down at you from the shadowy ceiling of the woods. You are no longer a person standing before a creature. You are an insect at the base of a god. He could crush you without even noticing. The sheer scale of him is a statement of absolute power, a reminder of your own insignificance. He certainly doesn't need a ladder to inspect the canopy for dead branches. Comparative mythologists continue to debate whether the size-shifting abilities of nature spirits represent a literal belief in metamorphosis, or are allegorical descriptions of nature's own cycles of growth and decay. But as you crane your neck, staring up at a being who is now as tall as a 10-story building, the allegory feels terrifyingly literal. Then, just as slowly as it began, the process reverses. The colossal form begins to contract. The groaning sound returns as he sinks back toward the earth, his head descending through the leaves, his shoulders becoming visible once more. He shrinks past his initial towering height back to the size of a large man. But he doesn't stop there. He continues to condense, his form becoming smaller and smaller. He shrinks to the height of a child, then to the size of a gnarled bush. The details of his face and clothes blur, his form simplifying as he diminishes. He becomes as small as a patch of mushrooms, then a single fern, and finally, he dissolves into the forest floor itself. One moment he is a shrinking man-shaped thing. The next he is just a blade of grass, indistinguishable from the millions of others around it. He is gone. The space where he stood is now just an empty patch of forest, dappled in sunlight. There is a curious folk belief that if you are very lucky and the woods are perfectly silent, you can sometimes press your ear to the ground and hear the Leshi singing in a tiny, reedy voice when he is in this grass blade form. You don't dare try. You are left alone again, your mind reeling. Was any of that real? The silence that rushes back in feels different now. It's not just empty, it's charged with potential. The entity you met could be anywhere. He could be the tree you're standing next to. He could be the moss under your boot. He could be a dust mote dancing in a sunbeam. It was a display, a lesson. "This is my world," he seemed to say without uttering a word. "Here, I can be everything or I can be nothing, and you are a guest." Trying to explain this to anyone back in your world would surely earn you a long-term stay in a room with very comfortable, soft walls. You shake your head, trying to clear it, but the image of those two green stars staring down from the canopy is burned into your memory. The silence where the Leshi vanished is deafening. Your brain, having just witnessed a flagrant violation of several fundamental laws of physics, is struggling to reboot. You stand there for a minute, half expecting the ground to start talking to you, but nothing happens. The forest has returned to its previous state of benign indifference. There is nothing to do but to start walking again. You pick a direction that feels vaguely downhill, operating on the flimsy hope that water runs down and people build things near water. It's not much of a plan, but it's all you have. You push through a curtain of low-hanging willow branches and enter a small clearing, distinguished by a large moss-covered boulder in its center. And it is here that your day, already spiraling into the extraordinary, takes another sharp turn. From behind the boulder, a low growl rumbles through the air, a sound that vibrates deep in your chest. A moment later, its source emerges. A massive Eurasian brown bear. It is huge, it shoulders a mountain of muscle and shaggy dark fur. It lifts its great head, sniffing the air, and its small dark eyes fix on you. Now would be an excellent time to recall all that advice from park ranger videos. Do you make yourself look bigger? Do you play dead? Does any of that apply when the forest you're in might be actively messing with you? The bear takes a heavy step forward, then another, before stopping about 20 feet away. It doesn't seem angry. It seems curious. As if the situation weren't quite cinematic enough, a second figure pads into the clearing from your left. A large gray wolf, lean and silent, its movements fluid as water. It stops, its yellow eyes locking onto yours with the same unnerving, intelligent focus as the bear. So here you are, flanked by two of the continent's most formidable predators. Being the center of attention isn't the ego boost you'd imagine. It feels distinctly like being the main course. Yet they just watch. The bear huffs, a steamy plume in the cool air. The wolf tilts its head, its ears pricked. There is no snarling, no posturing for a kill. There is only a coordinated, intelligent stillness that is far more terrifying than open aggression. Cultural historians debate whether the Leshy's association with specific animals like wolves and bears stems from their role as apex predators, or if these animals were originally totemic figures in their own right, who were later absorbed into the singular archetype of the forest master. The original Slavic word for bear, for instance, was considered so powerful and sacred that it became taboo to speak it aloud. People instead used a nickname, medved, which simply means honey eater, a euphemism born of profound respect and fear. Looking at the magnificent beast in front of you, you can understand why. It radiates an aura of ancient power. Then you notice the impossibility, just as with the Leshi in his man form. Neither the bear nor the wolf casts a shadow. The dappled sunlight pools around their feet, but there is no dark shape on the mossy ground beside them. At that moment, the bear's outline seems to shimmer, just for a second, like a heat haze off summer asphalt. The wolf's form wavers too, losing its sharp definition. And you know, this isn't a chance encounter with the local wildlife. After seeing a tree man play with the Z-axis, shapeshifting animals are the next logical square on your weird day bingo card. This is him, the Leshi, in his other favored forms. He is the shepherd of the woods, and all animals are his flock. When he travels through his domain, he sometimes does so as one of them, running with the wolves or walking with the bears. He is not just their guardian, he is them. This is how he hunts poachers and guides lost shepherds. He becomes the eyes and ears of the forest, in the most literal sense. It is said that if a Leshi in animal form helps you, you must not hunt that type of animal for a long time, lest you accidentally harm the spirit himself. It's a piece of folk wisdom that suddenly feels like very sound advice. The two creatures, the bear and the wolf, take one last long look at you before turning in unison and melting back into the trees as silently as they appeared. leaving you alone once more with a racing heart and a rapidly crumbling sense of reality. You stumble away from the clearing where the bear and wolf stood, your mind a tangled knot of awe and terror. The shape-shifting display was the final confirmation. You are not in a normal forest. You are in a place where reality is fluid, where the rules are written in a language you don't understand. A profound sense of isolation washes over you. You are alone, hopelessly lost, and at the mercy of a being who seems to view you as a passing amusement. A desperate longing for a familiar face, a human voice, aches in your chest, and as if in answer to your prayer, you hear it. Your name, called out in a voice that cuts through the forest gloom and straight into your heart. It's the voice of someone you love, a parent, a sibling, your closest friend. It is perfectly, flawlessly them. The pitch, the accent, the slightly worried tremor in their tone. It's a sound more comforting than a warm fire, more real than the impossible things you've just seen. Hope, brilliant and blinding, floods your system. You are not alone. They came looking for you. You must be near the edge of the woods. "I'm here," you shout, your voice cracking with relief. You begin to run, crashing through the undergrowth in the direction of the voice. "I'm here, over here." The voice calls back, closer this time. "Thank goodness. Keep talking, I'll find you." You can almost picture them, just beyond that thicket of birch trees, their face a mask of relief. You always knew their voice could lead you anywhere. You just never imagined a potential bog of doom would be one of the destinations. This is better than any GPS, a personal Find My Mortal feature courtesy of the forest itself. You push through prickly branches that tear at your clothes and skin. You splash through a shallow, muddy creek that soaks your boots. But you don't care. You are seconds away from safety. But something is wrong. Every time you think you are about to break through the trees and see them, the voice calls again, and it's still just as far away. It never gets any closer. You stop, panting, leaning against a tree. "Where are you?" you call out. "Right here," the voice answers, now sounding like it's right beside your ear. You spin around, but there is nothing but the dark, silent trees. A cold dread begins to extinguish the warm flame of hope. This is another game, his most cruel one yet. Psychoanalysts interpreting these myths often suggest the mimicked voice of a loved one represents the subconscious, self-destructive desire to become lost, a Freudian death drive personified by the deceptive spirit of the wild. As you stand here, heart sinking, you can feel the pull of that idea. The desire to believe was so strong it made you abandon what little sense of direction you had left, leading you deeper into the darkest, most tangled part of the forest you've seen yet. You remember a strange detail from the old stories. Sometimes the Leshy's mimicry has a flaw. He can replicate the words and the tone, but he forgets the human need for breath. A long, panicked sentence might be delivered in one continuous, unnerving stream of sound. You hadn't noticed it before, but now you question the memory of the voice. "Come on, what are you waiting for?" the voice says, a touch of impatience in its perfect, replicated tone. And at the end of the sentence it happens, the last word, "for," dissolves. It warps and stretches, the human sound bleeding away into that high, clear, whistling note you heard when this all began. The illusion is shattered. The beautiful, comforting sound curdles into something monstrous. It was him all along, using your own memories as bait. This is, without a doubt, the most sophisticated and terrifying prank call in history. He has tasted your hope and found it entertaining. The beliefs surrounding the Leshi were shaped in the world of Eastern Slavic culture, a world that, after the Great Schism of 1054, developed under the influence of the Eastern Orthodox Church. This religious tradition had its own unique way of dealing with old pagan spirits, sometimes recasting them not as simple monsters, but as complex devilish tempters who preyed on human emotional weakness like despair and false hope. Standing here, in the deepening gloom, lured into a trap by your own desperate heart, you can see exactly how they came to that conclusion. The voice is silent now. The game is over, and you are more lost than ever. The silence left behind by the warped, mimicked voice is heavier than any sound. It's a silence full of mockery. You feel foolish, naive, your hope expertly used as a leash to drag you deeper into this prison of trees. The despair is a cold, heavy weight in your gut. There's nothing left to do but walk. You don't even try to find a path anymore. You just pick a direction and force your way through the grasping branches and cloying mud, driven by a dull, mechanical need to keep moving. After what feels like an hour, a strange and terrible feeling begins to creep in, a sense of déjà vu. You come across a fallen log so covered in bright green moss it looks like a sleeping beast. You're sure you've seen it before. A few minutes later, you pass a peculiar birch tree, its trunk split near the base into two identical twisting columns. You stop. You passed this exact tree 20 minutes ago, but from the other direction. A knot of panic tightens in your chest. You turn 90 degrees and walk with grim determination, counting your paces, focusing on a distant pine as a landmark. 10 minutes of hard walking later, you are standing right in front of the split-trunk birch tree again. This isn't just bad luck. This isn't you walking in circles. The forest itself is looping. It's like a badly designed video game level, forcing you back to the start every time you think you've made progress. You are not just lost in the Leshy's territory. You are trapped by it. His domain is not a passive patch of land where he happens to live. It is an extension of his will, a space where the laws of geography are subject to his whim. He can bend paths, turn landscapes inside out, and erect invisible walls that funnel you exactly where he wants you to go, or nowhere at all. You're certainly getting your daily steps in, but your net travel distance appears to be zero. Ancient cultures had a keen sense of the boundary between the human world and the wild. The Romans distinguished between a locus amunis, a pleasant, orderly natural space, and a locus horribilis, a terrifying, chaotic wilderness where spirits dwelled. The Leshy's forest is the ultimate locus horribilis. You've crossed a border that wasn't marked on any map. In the old tales, these borders were sometimes physical: a stream, a ravine, a line of oddly bent trees. The Leshy would sometimes mark the edges of his realm by bending saplings down to the ground, creating living arches that served as gateways. To pass through one was to accept his rules. Archaeologists and folklorists often debate whether ancient boundary markers found in Eastern Europe were purely for human property lines, or if they also served a ritual purpose to demarcate the perceived edge of a spirit's territory. You are inside that territory now, and the exit has vanished. Every tree is a bar in your cell, the canopy is the ceiling. The feeling of being watched has returned, but it's different now. It's not the detached curiosity of before. It feels possessive. You are his now. His guest, his plaything, his prisoner. You finally give up, slumping down onto the mossy log you've now passed 3 times. The futility of your effort is crushing. You could walk until you collapsed from exhaustion and you would wake up right here. Leaving a trail of breadcrumbs would be pointless. He would likely command the squirrels to rearrange them into a mocking smiley face. This is the true nature of his power. It isn't just shapeshifting or mimicry. It's a fundamental mastery over the space he inhabits. There are quirky folk remedies against this power, of course. Strange, specific bits of magic like the belief that a Leshy despises a horse collar and that leaving one on a fence post can keep him from leading your horses astray from their pasture. But you have no horse collar. You have nothing but your useless phone and the sinking realization that you are utterly, completely at the mercy of the shy, mossy, and gentle guardian who has decided for now that you are not allowed to leave. You sit on the mossy log, the fight having completely drained out of you. There is no escape. The realization is strangely calming. The panic has receded, leaving behind a clear, cold, and profound sense of helplessness. You are in the forest's timeout corner, waiting for a decision from an entity whose rules you don't know. So you wait, you watch. And as your own frantic energy subsides, the forest around you begins to change once more. Slowly, life returns to the small clearing. A robin, then another, begins to sing from a high branch. A red squirrel, chattering indignantly, chases a rival in a dizzying spiral up a pine tree. Then from the ferns to your right, a young fawn steps out. It moves with a delicate, cautious grace, but when its wide, dark eyes land on you, it does not bolt. It simply watches you for a moment, its ears twitching, before it lowers its head and begins to nibble at a patch of clover. It is completely, utterly unafraid of you. And in that moment, you begin to understand the Leshy's temperament. It is not simple good or evil, not a clear-cut monster from a fairy tale. His personality is as complex and multifaceted as the forest he rules. You've just experienced his mischievous side, the trickster who delights in confusion, who finds the panic of a lost human to be a fascinating diversion. His games are terrifying, but perhaps not born of true malice. He is an ancient, lonely being, and you are a new toy. But what you are seeing now in the fearlessness of this fawn is his primary role, the guardian. He is the shepherd of the woods. He guides migrating herds away from danger, shows animals where to find food in a harsh winter, and protects the young and vulnerable. To the creatures of the forest, he is no monster. He is their gentle, mossy king. This duality is a hallmark of figures from the old Slavic world, a world that for centuries practiced what historians call dvoevery, or double faith. During this long period, new Christian beliefs mixed with the deeply rooted pagan traditions. A farmer would attend church but would also leave a bowl of milk for the spirit in his house. This created a worldview where spirits weren't angels or demons, but complex beings with their own morality. The Leshi is perhaps the greatest example of this. He is good to what is his, and dangerously unpredictable to outsiders. But there is a third side to his personality, one you have thankfully not seen. It is his wrath. Sociologists who study folklore often posit that the Leshy's wrath against those who exploit the forest serves as a supernatural enforcement mechanism for sustainable living, a boogeyman created to promote ecological balance in pre-industrial societies. If a woodsman cuts down a sacred ancient tree, if a hunter kills for sport, and not for food if a traveler carelessly starts a fire, then the gentle guardian vanishes and an avenger takes his place. His retribution is absolute. He might lead the offender into a deep swamp or cause a dead branch, a widowmaker, to fall on them. He might drive them mad with incessant whispers and laughter until they run off a cliff. Or in one of the most famous folkloric punishments, he might tickle them to death. It sounds absurd on paper, but you imagine the reality is considerably less funny. His anger could also take stranger forms. One of the most feared things he could do was abduct a human infant from a village on the forest's edge, leaving in its place one of his own offspring, a sickly, foul-tempered, perpetually screaming changeling that would bring ruin to the family. Looking at the peaceful fawn, you review your own actions. Did you snap any branches unnecessarily? Did you curse the woods for getting you lost? Your fate, you realize, rests on his judgment of you. You are a trespasser. Whether you are treated as a curiosity, a threat, or simply ignored, is entirely up to the shy, gentle, and sometimes terrifyingly wrathful guardian of the woods. You sit on the log for what feels like a long time, watching the forest live its life around you. The fawn eventually wanders off, melting back into the ferns, and the bird song softens as the afternoon light begins to fade. Your stillness seems to have been the right choice. You haven't been tormented, tickled, or turned into a mushroom. Perhaps your quiet respect has been noted, and just as that thought crosses your mind, something impossible happens. A path appears. One moment, you are staring into a dense, pathless thicket. The next, there is a clear, discernible track winding through it. It's not a wide road, just a narrow trail of flattened earth and sparse grass. But it is unmistakably a path leading away into the woods. It wasn't there a minute ago. You are sure of it. Hope, that stubborn, foolish emotion, flickers back to life. Is this a reward? A sign that your trial is over and you are being shown the way out? Or is it the prelude to another, more elaborate game? You have no other options. With a deep breath, you get to your feet and step onto the trail. The first few minutes are wonderful. The ground is firm, the going is easy, and the trees seem to part just enough to let you pass without snagging your clothes. It feels like you are finally making progress, heading somewhere definite. This is the Leshy's most famous trick, the one that gave him his reputation across all of the Slavic lands. It's a phenomenon so common it has its own name in the old languages, a word that means something like to be led astray or to be confused. It is what happens when the forest decides you are not going where you think you were going. Even celebrated authors like Ivan Turgenev wrote about it. In his A Sportsman's sketches, peasant boys around a campfire share tales of the Leshi as a simple fact of life, a known danger of the woods as real as wolves or winter. You begin to notice subtle inconsistencies. The light is fading faster than it should, and the air is becoming thick, humid, and heavy with the smell of stagnant water. The path, once so clear and inviting, is becoming muddy and slick. You are heading into a swamp. The majestic pines and oaks have given way to stunted willows and reeds, and the air is filled with the high-pitched whine of mosquitoes. This is the magical equivalent of your GPS confidently telling you to drive straight into a lake. Every instinct tells you to turn back, but the lure of the path ahead is strong. It's your only guide. Cognitive scientists analyzing these folktales suggest that the vanishing path phenomenon could be a cultural explanation for natural human disorientation in monotonous environments, where a lack of landmarks causes the brain to create phantom patterns. But this feels deliberate, intelligent, and deeply malicious. The path leads you onto a series of unstable-looking tussocks of grass, separated by pools of black, foul-smelling water. You hop from one to the next, your boots sinking into the muck. This can't possibly be the way out. You glance over your shoulder, back the way you came, and your blood runs cold. The path is gone. Behind you is just an impassable wall of reeds and dark water. You look forward, and the path vanishes there too, dissolving into the heart of the swamp. You have been expertly led into the wettest, darkest, most miserable part of the entire forest, and abandoned. The track was an illusion, a fishing lure cast by the Leshi to drag you from a place of relative safety into a place of certain misery and danger. He has a particular fondness for this kind of prank. Old stories tell of him delighting in leading entire wedding parties astray, letting them wander for hours through mud and thorns until the bride's finery is ruined and the celebratory mood has curdled into terror. You are standing on a fistful of marsh grass surrounded by buzzing insects and dark water, utterly betrayed by the very hope he allowed you to feel. The game, it seems, was not over after all. You are standing on a clump of grass in the middle of a swamp as twilight bleeds across the sky, turning the black water to a bruised purple. The air is thick with mosquitoes, and the one-star review for this particular nature excursion is already composing itself in your head. This is it. This is how it ends. Swallowed by mud, tormented by a mythological creature, a cautionary tale for future generations. But as the despair begins to crystallize into a cold, hard certainty, a memory floats up from the depths of your mind. It's a fragment of a story, a silly-sounding piece of advice for what to do when the Leshi has you lost. It's the kind of thing you hear and file away under useless but charming folklore. It feels absurd, but right now absurd is all you've got. The old tales are full of them. Strange, specific little rules for dealing with the master of the woods. It's a different kind of law from the ones humans write down, like the Ruskaya Pravda, the great medieval legal code of the Rus's people that dealt with theft and property. The Leshi's law is older, stranger, a law of magic and symbols. And the way to survive it is not to fight it with strength, but to subvert it with its own twisted logic. The most famous remedy is inversion. The Leshi is an inverted being. His shoes are swapped, his coat is buttoned the wrong way. To break his spell, you must enter his inverted world. You must take off your clothes and put them on again, inside out. Folklorists and cultural anthropologists debate the origins of these rituals. Are they a form of sympathetic magic, directly countering the spirit's nature? Or are they psychological pattern interrupts, designed to shock a panicked brain back to clarity? Standing here, ankle deep in mud, you don't particularly care about the academic theory. You just care if it works. So you try it. Balancing precariously on the tussock, you shrug off your jacket. The air is cold on your arms. You turn the jacket inside out, the liner now facing the world, and awkwardly put it back on. You feel ridiculous. Next, you pull your shirt off over your head, turn it inside out too, and put it back on. The seams press uncomfortably against your skin. You are a muddy, miserable, and fashionably deconstructed mess. Swamp chic, you think, with a flicker of grim humor. You stand there for a moment, feeling no different, the mosquitoes still whining in your ears. It was a stupid idea. Of course it was. But then a soft breeze rustles the reeds. It's the first real breeze you've felt since entering the swamp. A moment later, you hear the deep, resonant hoot of an owl from the direction of the woods, a clean, natural sound, free of any mimicry or malice. And when you look down at the dark water at your feet again, you see it. A thick, gnarled root like the spine of some ancient serpent lies just beneath the surface, leading from your clump of grass to another, and another, forming a clear, solid path back toward the trees. It was there the whole time, a natural bridge, but the Leshy's magic had placed a veil over your eyes, making you see only impassable water. The absurd, simple act of turning your shirt inside out has somehow short-circuited his power. It's as if you've shown him that you understand the game, that you know the rules of his looking-glass world. Other tricks from the old lore flash through your mind, swapping your shoes, walking backward out of the enchanted area, or even just sitting down on a log and trying to guess the correct direction. A sort of mental wager against the spirit. With a surge of adrenaline that tastes like hope, you take a careful step onto the slippery route, then another. The path is real. It's solid. You are not free of the forest yet, not by a long shot. But you have won this round. You have broken the spell. You make your way carefully across the submerged bridge of roots, your inside-out jacket feeling like a strange badge of honor. Stepping onto the solid, mossy ground on the other side is one of the most profound reliefs of your life. The air is cooler here, cleaner, free of the swamp's cloying humidity and the maddening drone of insects. You are still lost, still in danger, but you have survived the last ordeal. More importantly, you have learned something. You cannot outrun the forest. You cannot outsmart its master at his own game of hide and seek. Defiance, like turning your clothes inside out, might work on a specific spell, but it won't get you home. Your strategy has to change. You have been an adversary, a plaything. Now you must try to be a guest. This requires a shift from defiance to diplomacy. You need to show respect, to acknowledge the master of the house and ask for his favor. And in the old world, the way you did that was with a gift. This taps into an ancient and sacred tradition, the idea of the guest gift, a concept so important to early civilizations that it formed the bedrock of social interaction. By giving a gift, you formalize the relationship, changing your status from intruder to guest and placing a social, or in this case, magical obligation on the host. Economic historians still debate whether these offerings were seen as a bribe to a dangerous entity or a tax paid for the use of the forest's resources. To you, it just feels like the only sane option left. The traditional offerings for a Leshi were simple things imbued with meaning. A piece of bread, a pinch of salt, a pancake, or a small glass of vodka. These were things of the hearth, of civilization, shared with the wild. You rummage through your pockets, hoping for something, anything suitable. The currency for this transaction feels terrifyingly vague. You find half a granola bar, its wrapper crumpled but intact. It's not exactly a freshly baked loaf, and you sincerely hope the ancient spirit of the woods doesn't have a nut allergy. This whole negotiating with forest spirits is a skill they really should have covered in school. You find the perfect place. A large, flat-top stump, long since felled, its surface covered in a miniature ecosystem of moss and tiny fungi. It feels like an altar. With a sense of solemnity that surprises you, you unwrap the granola bar and place it carefully in the center of the stump. It looks small and pathetic in the vastness of the woods. Still, it is all you have to offer. You stand back and, feeling a little self-conscious, you speak the words aloud, your voice soft in the twilight. Great spirit of this forest, you begin. I am lost. I meant no disrespect by coming here. Please, accept this small gift and grant me safe passage out of your home. There is no immediate response, no thunderclap, no ghostly voice. The granola bar just sits there. But the atmosphere changes. The feeling of being watched, which has been a constant, oppressive weight on your shoulders, lifts. It doesn't vanish entirely, but it recedes, changing from a predatory stare to a neutral, passive observation. The silence of the forest feels different too. It's no longer mocking or menacing, it is simply quiet, a deep and expectant peace. You have a distinct, unshakable feeling that your plea has been heard and your offering, humble as it was, has been accepted. It's a fragile truce, a tentative pact written on a stump with a half-eaten snack. You have asked for help in the proper way. Now all you can do is wait and see if the notoriously fickle, shy, and gentle guardian of the woods decides to grant it. You stand by the stump in the quiet, fading light, the truce you've brokered feeling as fragile as a spider's web. Your offering has been made, your plea for safe passage sent out into the vast, silent woods. As you wait, your mind turns to the other kinds of people who enter these forests. Not by accident like you, but for their livelihood. Shepherds, hunters, woodsmen, they all had to coexist with the Leshi, and they did so through a complex system of pacts and bargains. For a shepherd, the Leshi could be a powerful ally. At the beginning of the grazing season, a shepherd would lead his flock to the forest's edge and make a formal offering. Bread and salt laid on a clean cloth atop a stump, just as you have done. He would ask the Leshi to watch over his animals, to protect them from wolves and bears, and to keep them from straying. In exchange for this respect, and often the promise of the finest lamb at the season's end, the Leshi would become the perfect shepherd's assistant. He was the best farm insurance that money couldn't buy. Tales say he would keep the flock tightly gathered with soft whistles, guide them to the lushest pastures, and ensure no predator dared touch them. There was a genuine symbiosis. Ethnobiologists studying these relationships argue that the pact with the Leshi was a folkloric framework for expressing and enforcing principles of sustainable resource management, ensuring that pastures were not overgrazed. The relationship with hunters was similar, but more fraught with tension. A hunter would also make an offering, asking for a successful hunt. The Leshi, as the absolute master of the forest's fauna, would then release a certain amount of game to the hunter, driving a deer or a wild boar across his path. But this came with a heavy condition. The hunter must not be greedy. He could take what he needed for his family to survive, but if he killed for sport, or took more than his share, the Leshi's friendship would instantly turn to wrath. The forest's bag limit was far stricter than any government's. The Leshi was a friend to the hungry, but a mortal enemy to the wasteful. This ongoing negotiation was part of a broader historical reality for early Slavic peoples, many of whom practiced a form of slash-and-burn agriculture called podsika. They were constantly clearing, using and abandoning plots of land at the forest's edge, placing them in a state of permanent dialogue with the wild world and its master. You reflect that you fit into none of these categories. You are not here to graze a flock or to hunt for your supper. Your resume with skills like gets lost easily is probably not very impressive to a primordial nature spirit. You are an outsider with no purpose here, and your pact is not one of mutual benefit but a simple plea for mercy. This makes his decision about you all the more uncertain. He is under no obligation to help. Just as this disheartening thought settles in, you see a flicker of movement. A tiny brown wren lands on a branch a few feet away. It fixes you with its bright black eye, lets out a sharp, clear chirp, and then flits away deeper into the trees. It flies about 20 feet, lands, and turns to look at you. It chirps again, a clear, insistent sound. Then it takes off again, flying another short distance before landing and looking back. It's not just flying, it is leading. This is your answer. There will be no booming voice, no grand apparition. Just this. A small feathered messenger sent by the master of the woods to guide you. Your offering was accepted. Your plea was granted. With a heart that is now beating with a wild, cautious hope, you take your first step to follow the bird. You follow the wren. The tiny bird leads you with an unerring confidence, flitting from branch to branch, always waiting for you to catch up. The journey now is completely different from your earlier frantic wanderings. A clear, albeit narrow, animal trail seems to open up wherever the wren leads. Thorny branches seem to bend away from your face, and the ground under your feet is firm and dry. The forest is no longer your adversary. It is your host, and it is politely showing you to the door. The wren guides you into a part of the woods that feels older and more peaceful than any you have seen yet. The trees here are ancient, silver-barked birches, and the sunlight filters through their leaves in a gentle, dappled cascade. The air is still and warm. Your guide bird lands on a branch and falls silent, a signal for you to pause. And through a gap in the trees, you see a sight not meant for human eyes. In a small sunlit clearing, there are figures. One is a woman, tall and slender, with long hair that seems to be woven from green moss and silver birch bark. She is sitting on the grass, her hands gracefully weaving a basket from river reeds. This is the Leshenka, the wife of the Leshi. In her is the forest's gentle, nurturing soul, a folkloric echo perhaps of the ancient female nature deities worshipped by Neolithic cultures like the Kukuteni Tripilia people, who left behind thousands of goddess figurines millennia ago. Near her, two small figures are playing. They look like human children from a distance, but they are wilder. Their skin the color of rich soil, and their hair a tangle of leaves and twigs. They are the Leshanki, the children of the forest. They tumble and roll in the soft moss. Their laughter not a human sound, but like the rustling of dry leaves in an autumn wind. Their games are wild. One moment they are chasing a fox who seems to be a willing playmate. The next they are seeing who can balance a mushroom on their head the longest. Theirs is the chaotic, unpredictable, and joyful energy of the woods. It is said that these are the creatures who perform the smaller, less consequential mischief of the forest, like tying your shoelaces together while you rest or braiding your hair into impossible knots. Some folklorists theorize that the family of a nature spirit is a late addition to the mythology, an attempt to anthropomorphize an elemental force and make it more relatable by fitting it into a familiar human social structure. But watching this serene, secret, and deeply domestic scene, it feels ancient and essential. You've stumbled upon the Leshy's home life, a supernatural family picnic that no travel guide could ever prepare you for. You've just gone from unwanted intruder to creepy voyeur, which isn't exactly a promotion. The Leshenka looks up, not at you but in your direction. Her expression is calm and unreadable as a deep forest pool. She has sensed you. The two children freeze in the middle of their game, their bodies going instantly still, and then they melt back into the shadows of the trees with the speed of startled deer. The show is over. Your wren guide lets out an impatient chirp as if to say, "You've seen enough. Move along." It is a powerful reminder of your status here. You are being granted safe passage, not a guided tour. This glimpse was a rare gift, or perhaps just an accident, but lingering is not an option, You turn away from the clearing and hurry to follow the bird. The image of the wild, secret family burned into your mind. The Leshi is not just a guardian or a trickster, he is a husband and a father, with a hidden life as deep and complex as the woods he rules. You hurry away from the clearing, the image of the forest family still vivid in your mind. The wren leads you on, and you follow without hesitation. The pact is holding. You are being guided. After some time, the bird leads you up a gentle incline to a rocky outcrop that gives you a clear view of a long, wide valley below. The wren lands on a branch beside you and becomes still, indicating that you should watch. What you see next is one of the deepest and most secret ceremonies of the wild world. Down in the valley, the animals are on the move. Not just a few deer or a single boar, but all of them. It is a great, silent, and orderly procession. Dozens of red deer march in a neat line, their heads held high. A family of wild boar follows, the little striped piglets trotting to keep up with their mother. Behind them are foxes, their coats like flashes of fire, badgers lumbering along with their distinctive gait, and a sea of smaller creatures, hares, squirrels, martens. Even predators are part of the parade. A lean, gray wolf trots calmly, its path sometimes crossing that of the deer, but neither species pays the other any mind. The natural law of hunter and hunted has been suspended. This is the forest's holiest procession, far more orderly than any human parade. It's got a similar predator and prey being friends vibe to Noah's Ark, but thankfully without the impending global flood. And at the rear of the procession, ensuring none stray, is a figure you recognize, the Leshi. He is in his tall form, as high as a young pine tree, and he carries a long, gnarled staff of oak. He doesn't drive them or threaten them. He simply walks with them, their king, their shepherd, their master. This is his ultimate role. He doesn't just protect the animals, he owns them. They are his herd, his flock, his subjects. The ancient Kievan Rus's primary chronicle, one of the first written histories of the region, speaks of the pagan beliefs that Christianity sought to replace, a world teeming with spirits who commanded the natural world. The Leshi is a direct survivor from that older time. Historians of religion debate whether the Leshy's role as shepherd of the beasts is an indigenous Slavic concept, or if it was influenced by the iconography of Christian saints who were patrons of animals. But watching him now, it feels primordial, a power far older than any organized religion. According to the old folklore, at certain times of the year, the Leshi gathers every living creature in his domain and leads them on a great migration, either to new feeding grounds or to their winter dens. He is counting his subjects, making sure the books are balanced. You wonder if he has to fill out paperwork for any missing squirrels. This spectacle also connects to one of his stranger quirks. The Leshi is said to be a passionate gambler. In the stories, he would often meet with the Leshis of neighboring forests to play cards, and the stakes were his animals. A whole pack of wolves or a flock of birds could be lost or won in a single hand, and the animals would dutifully migrate to their new master's forest the next day. As you watch the great migration below, a sound like a distant crack of thunder echoes through the valley. It is the Leshi, swinging a great whip, though it never touches any of his creatures. It is a signal, a show of his absolute authority. To accidentally witness this procession was considered a powerful and dangerous omen for any human. But you are not here by accident. You are being allowed to see this. Your tiny guide bird has brought you here specifically to wait for the king and his subjects to pass. It is a mark of respect. You are being treated not as an intruder to be hidden from, but as a guest who must wait politely for the host to finish his important work. The last of the animals vanishes into the trees and the valley falls silent once more. The great procession has passed. Your guide bird chirps, and you descend from the rocky outcrop, continuing your journey. As you walk, you become aware of a change in the forest itself. The air has grown colder with a sharp, crisp edge that bites at your exposed skin. The golden afternoon light has a thin, watery quality to it, and the ground is carpeted in a thick, rustling layer of fallen leaves, in shades of amber, rust, and blood red. Autumn is not just coming, it is here, in its final, glorious, and melancholy phase. You have stumbled into the Leshi's domain during his busiest and most chaotic time of year. Autumn is his season of farewells. He is the one, it is said, who must shepherd the birds on their long journey south. He acts as the world's strangest air traffic controller, gathering the flocks, making sure none are left behind, and opening the gates to a mythical warm land called Vire where they will spend the winter. But his primary task is preparing the forest for its long sleep, and this often involves a final, glorious burst of chaotic energy. Before he hibernates, the Leshi rampages through his woods one last time, howling with the voice of the wind, ripping leaves from the branches, snapping dead wood from the trees and driving all his creatures to their winter burrows. It is the seasonal equivalent of a toddler having a massive tantrum right before finally crashing for a nap. This final flurry of activity ends on a very specific day. The old folklore is tied to the ancient agricultural and religious calendar, specifically the Julian calendar, or Old Style, which the Orthodox Church still uses to mark its feast days. On October 4th, the day of Saint Yerafeh, the old stories say that the Leshis and other spirits of the wood vanish. They sink deep into the earth to hibernate, and the forest becomes safe from their mischief. Comparative religion scholars often debate whether the hibernation of the forest spirit is a simple personification of the dormant season, or if it reflects an older, dualistic cosmology where the world is cyclically abandoned by the gods of life to the forces of cold and darkness. For the people who lived on the edge of the woods, this was a practical and vital piece of knowledge. No one would venture into the forest on the day the Leshi went to sleep, for his final autumn rampage made it the most dangerous day of the year. But after that, through the long, cold months of winter, the supernatural threat was gone. The forest still held dangers, freezing temperatures, wolves, starvation, but it was no longer a place of magical confusion. The master was asleep. His snores, it was said, caused blizzards. When he finally reawakened in the spring, he would be grumpy and disoriented, rubbing the sleep from his eyes with such force that it would cause the final snows to melt, sometimes triggering destructive spring floods. As you follow your guide bird through the rustling leaves, you feel the Leshy's frantic autumn energy all around you. The wind that moans through the branches sounds like a lonely, wild howl. You see squirrels frantically burying their last nuts and a badger scurrying toward its set. You realize you are in a race against time. Your guide is leading you out, but it is doing so during the final, chaotic moments of the Leshy's reign. You are being escorted from the party just as the host starts breaking the furniture. You walk on, following your tiny, feathered guide through a forest that feels increasingly alive with a wild, chaotic energy. The wind howls, a mournful and ancient sound, and dry leaves swirl around you in frantic eddies. The Leshy is throwing his farewell party, and the entire woods is his dance floor. Witnessing his power firsthand, the shape-shifting, the mastery of the beasts, the raw control over the landscape, you can't help but wonder where such a being comes from. He feels too old, too powerful, to be just a simple ghost or goblin. And you are right. The Leshy is not a character from a children's story. He is the last echo of a lost religion, a forgotten god still ruling over his dwindling kingdom. His origins are rooted deep in the pre-Christian paganism of the Slavic peoples. There is significant scholarly debate surrounding the reconstruction of the Slavic pantheon, as very few primary written sources survive from that era. Much of what we know is pieced together from folklore and the hostile accounts of later Christian chroniclers. But within this reconstructed pantheon, there is one god who shares a remarkable number of traits with the creature you've encountered. Veles, the horned god of the underworld, the waters and the wilds. Veles was one of the most important and complex deities. He was the divine patron of cattle and wealth, but also of magic, poetry, and the untamed forest. He was the eternal rival of Perun, the high god of thunder and the sky. In the central myth of this religion, Perun ruled from the highest branches of the world tree, while Veles ruled from its roots in the dark, wet underworld. Their endless cosmic battle, a storm, was the engine that drove the world. The Leshy, with his dominion over all forest animals, his occasional depiction with horns, his shape-shifting, and his connection to the wild, chaotic forces of nature, is almost certainly a devolved form of this great god. He is Veles, downsized. No longer a major deity worshipped across the land, but a local spirit, a divine middle manager still in charge of the forestry division. Thinking of this adds a new layer of meaning to everything you've experienced. The Leshy's tricks and illusions are not just random mischief. They are a degraded form of the divine magic and poetry that Veles commanded. The ancient Slavic shamans, the Volkovs, were said to be patrons of Veles, communing with his spirit world through chants. The mimicry and whispers you heard were perhaps a faint, playful echo of that sacred magical speech. The entire encounter ceases to be a simple story of being lost and becomes a brush with the sacred, a confrontation with a divine power that has outlived its own religion. The passion to reconnect with these old gods is still strong today. A controversial text called the Book of Veles appeared in the 20th century, claiming to be an authentic scripture. While scholars almost universally consider it a modern forgery, its popularity speaks to a deep longing for this lost world. You are walking through a living myth. The wind that whips your hair is the howling of a dethroned god. The rustling leaves whisper his ancient name. Your guide bird, sent to you after a humble offering, is a creature bound by a divine pact, thousands of years old. You made a deal not just with a forest monster, but with the last remnant of a pantheon, a being whose memory is written into the very DNA of the landscape around you. Descended from a pagan god is a far more impressive ancestry than most can claim, and right now, you are a guest in his house. You continue your journey, the wren always a few yards ahead, a tiny living compass. This new understanding of the Leshy as a remnant god settles over you, and with it comes a question. What happens when a god is forgotten? What happens when a new faith arrives? One with a single, jealous god who tolerates no rivals. The answer is written all over the history of this land, and it explains why the Leshy is such a contradictory, confusing figure. Beginning in the 9th century, Christian missionaries from the Byzantine Empire began to push north into the Slavic lands. This process reached a dramatic climax around the year 988, when Prince Vladimir the Great of Kiev, after supposedly reviewing all the major religions, converted to Orthodox Christianity and made it the state religion. He famously ordered the great wooden idols of the old gods, including the thunder god Perun, to be torn down, flogged, and thrown into the Dnieper River. This was the official start of a religious and cultural war that would last for centuries. The missionaries had the toughest rebranding campaign in history ahead of them. Historians debate the speed and thoroughness of this conversion, but it's clear that in the remote villages and deep forests, the old ways did not die easily. Instead, the new religion and the old paganism began a long, slow, and messy process of merging and fighting. The powerful old gods could not be ignored, so they were recategorized. The high god Perun, with his thunder and authority, was sometimes syncretized with God the Father or with powerful saints like Elijah, who in the Old Testament also commanded the sky. But Veles, the horned god of the wild, chthonic underworld, he was a much easier fit for a different role. With his horns, his association with magic, and his rule over a world outside of human order, he was cast in the role of the devil. He got a very bad performance review from the new management. The Leshi, as Veles's direct descendant, inherited this demonic makeover. The awe and respect once afforded to the master of the woods were systematically replaced with fear and loathing. He was no longer a powerful nature deity with his own morality. He was a tempter, a fiend, a soul-stealing monster who worked for Satan. Getting lost in the woods was no longer just a physical danger, it was a spiritual one. The pacts that shepherds made were now seen as diabolical bargains. You can just imagine a medieval priest trying to explain this to a peasant. You know Greg, the local woods god who keeps the wolves from eating your sheep? Well, he's a demon now. You should pray to this new saint instead. This demonization explains the darkest parts of the Leshy's lore, the stories where he is not just a trickster, but a genuinely malevolent killer. Yet the old beliefs were too strong to be completely erased. And so, in the popular imagination, the Leshi became both. He was a demon to be feared and warded off with prayer, but he was also the old guardian who might still accept an offering of bread and salt. This fusion created some truly strange folk practices, like the belief that you could ward off a Leshi by saying the Lord's Prayer backward. A perfect example of using a Christian tool in a pagan magical way to combat a creature defined by both worlds. As you follow the wren, you can feel these layers of history under your feet. This forest has been the domain of a god, the lair of a demon, and the home of a fairy tale trickster. The being you've met is all three at once, a living contradiction born from a clash of civilizations. As you follow the wren, your mind churns with these new layers of history, trying to reconcile the image of a forgotten god with that of a local demon. Your own adventure, which began with a simple, ill-advised step off a path rather than a charming mission to pick berries, suddenly feels like a story you've heard before. The entire encounter, the tricks, the fear, the offering, the guidance, is a classic script, a folktale played out in real life. And as the leaves crunch under your boots, you remember one such tale. It begins, as so many do, with a little girl named Anya who wanders away from her village into the forest. She follows a trail of wild strawberries, each one redder and juicier than the last, until she looks up and realizes she has no idea where she is. The trees have grown thick and tall around her, and the sun is beginning to set. She calls for her mother, but the only answer is the forest mimicking her voice back to her, a cruel and perfect echo. This, of course, is the Leshi, enjoying his favorite game. The path she was on dissolves into moss, and every direction she turns looks the same. She is lost. This is the first test. A panicked adult might curse, might crash through the undergrowth in a rage, might try to fight the forest. This is always a mistake, but Anya is a child. After her initial fear, she does what her grandmother told her to do. She sits down at the base of a great pine tree, takes the last piece of black bread from her pocket, and places it on a clean patch of moss. "Grandfather of the woods," she whispers, her voice trembling. "I am lost, and I am sorry for trespassing. Please accept my gift and help me find my way home. The great Soviet folklorist Vladimir Prop, in his analysis of these stories, identified archetypal characters and plot functions. The Leshi is a classic example of a figure who acts as a tester. He presents a challenge that cannot be overcome with strength, but only with the correct ritual or the right display of character. Anya's simple act of respect passes the test. The Leshi, who had been watching from behind a tree, his mossy beard tangled with amusement, feels a flicker of something different. This child knows the rules. She knows the proper way. The malicious mischief drains out of him, replaced by the ancient instinct of the guardian. Structuralist folklorists argue that this lost child motif represents a symbolic rite of passage, a journey through the chaotic natural world that is necessary for a child to become an adult. In some darker versions of the tale, the Leshi might even keep the child for a year, teaching them the language of the birds and the secrets of herbs before returning them to their family, forever changed. But in this story, his help is more immediate. Anya, exhausted, curls up at the base of the tree and falls asleep. When she wakes, the sun is rising, and she is no longer in the deep woods. She is lying on a bed of soft moss at the very edge of the forest, and she can see the smoke rising from the chimneys of her own village just a few hundred yards away. Her little basket, once empty, is now heaped to the brim with the largest, sweetest strawberries she has ever seen. As the story plays out in your mind, you look at the wren flitting ahead of you. You look down at your own muddy boots and your inside-out jacket. You think of the squashed granola bar you left on the stump. The folktale isn't just a story. It's a survival guide, a user's manual for this place, far more useful than any modern book that lacks a chapter on supernatural diplomacy. You followed the script without even knowing it. You passed the test. And now, like Anya, you are being led home. Your tiny wren guide flies on, a steadfast and reassuring presence. The folktale you recalled has given you a sense of context, a framework for your ordeal. You followed the ancient rules and are now reaping the reward. You think about the name itself, Leshi, from the word les for forest, a simple, direct title, but as you walk, you realize this being, this archetype, must be older and wider than a single language. A spirit this powerful must have other names, other faces. He's a mythological secret agent with a dozen aliases. And he does. The being you know as the Leshi is a member of a vast, sprawling family of identical spirits that spans the whole of the Slavic world. In Poland, he might be called the Borowy, from bor, a dense coniferous forest. The Borowy is often described as even more ancient and wild than the Leshi, sometimes appearing as a great stag with moss for fur, or as an old man with owls perched on his horns, acting as his spies. In Ukraine, he is the Lesovik, a name that shares the same root, and his stories are much the same. A master of beasts and illusions. Travel west, and in Slovakia, he is the Lesnik, while in the Czech lands, he might be the Hejkal. The Hejkal is known for his terrifying, echoing shouts of Hej, Hej, that ring through the deep woods, a version of the spirit who leans more into raw, frightening power than subtle trickery. He is, perhaps, the screamo vocalist of the forest spirit world. The Christianization of the West Slavs, which began in earnest with the great Moravian Empire in the 9th century, followed the same pattern as it did in the East, suppressing and transforming these figures. Yet they survived, their core identity intact. Linguistic folklorists debate whether the slight variations in the spirit's characters between regions are due to unique local ecologies shaping the beliefs, or if they are simply the result of centuries of oral storytelling traditions diverging from a common Proto-Slavic root. Even beyond the Slavic world, in the neighboring Baltic lands, the Latvians tell of the Mezheveks, the old man of the forest, and the ancient Lithuanians worshipped Medena, a divine goddess of the woods and animals. What's remarkable is the consistency of the archetype. Whether he's called Leshi Borowy or Hejkal, the core of the being is the same. A powerful, capricious guardian of a specific forest, a shepherd to its animals, a dangerous foe to the arrogant and a potential ally to the respectful. Knowing the local terminology is crucial, you muse, if you ever plan to make getting supernaturally lost a regular travel hobby. As you walk, the forest around you begins to change. The dense, dark pines that have dominated the landscape start to give way to paler, more slender birch trees. The forest floor becomes lighter, covered more in grass than in deep moss. You are crossing a boundary, moving from one type of woods to another. You are nearing the edge of this specific Leshy's domain. Your guide bird doesn't slow, leading you out of the dark heart of the old woods and into this gentler, brighter landscape. You are almost home. The birch trees around you grow thinner, their pale trunks standing like graceful sentinels marking the edge of the deep woods. The sunlight is stronger here, falling in wide, warm patches on the grassy ground. Your journey is nearing its end. The immediate, heart-pounding fear has long since been replaced by a deep, resonant awe. You have survived an encounter with a living piece of folklore, and you realize that the being you met isn't just a forgotten relic. He has had a long and surprisingly successful career in the human world, a journey from the sacred grove to the silver screen. He's had a great agent, it seems. His literary debut on the world stage came with the greats of Russian literature. Alexander Pushkin, in the famous prologue to his poem Ruslan and Ludmila, paints a magical land of wonders where a Leshy wanders there, placing him alongside magical cats and imprisoned princesses in the foundational text of the Russian literary canon. From there, he became a recurring motif for 19th century authors and artists who sought to capture the soul of the Slavic world. The iconic Art Nouveau illustrations of Ivan Bilibin gave him a definitive face, while the groundbreaking works of the Ballet Russes in Paris exported a vision of a wild pagan Russia that captivated the West. But the Leshy's most dramatic transformation has happened in our own time. He has become a monster, a boss to be defeated in a video game. The Polish author Andrzej Sapkowski included the Leshi in his best-selling Witcher novels, reimagining him as an ancient, incredibly powerful and territorial forest creature. But it was the video game adaptation, The Witcher 3, Wild Hunt, that burned a new image of him into the global consciousness. The game's Leshy, as it's called, is a terrifying masterpiece of creature design. A towering, emaciated figure made of wood and rage, with a bleached deer skull for a head. He commands wolves and crows, ensnares his victims with grasping roots, and stalks the woods with a chilling, implacable malevolence. Media theorists argue that when a folkloric figure is adapted into a mass media product, it undergoes a process of hyper-realization, where the new, spectacular version overwrites the more nuanced original in the popular consciousness. For millions of people, this deer-skulled monster is the Leshy. The game's version is a brilliant piece of monster design, but it is, by necessity, simplified. It is a creature to be fought, a problem to be solved with a silver sword. It is far less likely to accept a squashed granola bar as a diplomatic solution. You reflect on the difference. The creature in the game is a formidable enemy. The being you met was a neighbor. A very strange, powerful, and dangerous neighbor, but one with rules, moods, and even a family, one you must coexist with, not conquer. The video game gets some details right, though. It captures the eerie silence that falls over the woods when the creature is near, a detail pulled straight from the oldest folklore. As you ponder this, you see it through the last of the trees, a weathered wooden fence, and beyond it the gray ribbon of a paved road. Your guide bird, its job done, gives one final chirp from a branch above you and then vanishes back into the deepening shadows of the woods. You are at the edge. You are safe. You stand at the threshold, a line of fallen leaves separating the wild, ancient world from the predictable, modern one. The wren is gone, the oppressive atmosphere has lifted, and the only sound is the distant hum of a car on the road. You are safe. You have survived. You look back into the deep, rust-colored shadows of the autumn woods, and think of the immense, overwhelming power you witnessed in there. And yet, for all his god-like command of the forest, the Leshy is not invincible. Like any creature of folklore, he has rules, and he has weaknesses. Symbolist anthropologists argue that the weaknesses of folkloric creatures are rarely arbitrary. They almost always represent the core elements of human civilization triumphing over the chaos of nature. The Leshy's greatest weakness, his most profound fear, is fire. As a being of wood and leaf and life, he is terrified of the controlled flame that represents the human hearth and the clearing in the woods. In the old stories, a traveler could keep a Leshy at bay by waving a burning branch. A circle of fire offered absolute protection. If you'd had a simple lighter in your pocket, your ordeal might have been very different. Another powerful weapon from the arsenal of civilization is salt. A symbol of purity, permanence, and preservation, salt was a magical ward against all sorts of unclean spirits. A line of it poured on the ground was a barrier he could not cross. This is why the offering of bread and salt was so potent. It was both a gift and a purifying agent, making the pact sacred and binding. Following the Christianization of the Slavic lands, the new faith brought its own weapons. A cross, a prayer, or a splash of holy water could drive the Leshi away, his ancient pagan divinity recoiling from the power of the new religion that had branded him a demon. And then there is iron. In many European folk traditions, the Fae and other spirits are vulnerable to cold iron. The blacksmith, with his mastery over fire and iron, was often seen as a magical figure in early communities, a craftsman who created the tools of civilization that held the wild, supernatural world at bay. An iron axe, for a woodsman, was not just for felling trees. Its very presence was a ward against the forest's master. In some tales, the Leshi can be harmed or even killed by iron, though his spirit is so tied to his domain that he would likely just regenerate with the spring, unless his entire forest was destroyed. You look back at the woods, thinking of this list of defenses. You had none of them. No fire, no salt, no iron, no cross. You couldn't fight him, so you were forced to understand him. You survived not by brandishing the symbols of your world, but by humbly submitting to the rules of his. You didn't defeat a monster, you appeased a guardian. You learned to be a polite guest in a very, very old house. And as you finally turn your back on the woods and take your first step toward the cold, hard asphalt of the road, you realize that this was, perhaps, the only way you could have survived at all. You pause at the edge of the road, one foot on the soft earth of the forest, the other hovering over the hard, black asphalt. Your ordeal is over. But before you step back into your own world, a final, profound realization dawns on you. The Leshi, for all his power, is not an anomaly. He is not the only spirit in this ancient land. You just happened to trespass in his house. The old Slavic world was crowded, a bureaucratic nightmare of petty gods, and every feature of the landscape had its own warden, its own rules, and its own dangers. Had you wandered by a river instead of into the woods, you would have met a Rusalka. She would have been beautiful, a young woman with long, wet hair and sad, luminous eyes, the ghost of a girl who had drowned. During the summer, these spirits are at their most powerful, climbing out of the water to sing on the riverbanks. Their voices an irresistible lure for young men. Had you been drawn in by her song, she would not have led you astray. She would have dragged you into the water, her laughter turning manic as she tickled you to death. The complex burial rites of the early Slavs, which sometimes involved exhuming and reinterring the dead, speak to a deep belief in restless spirits like these, souls trapped between worlds. Had you trespassed in a farmer's rye field at high noon, you would have faced the Polodnitsa, or Lady Midday. She would have appeared as a beautiful woman in a white dress, shimmering in the oppressive summer heat. She is the spirit of sunstroke, the terrifying personification of the sun at its most dangerous. She would have posed a complex riddle, and if you failed to answer, she would have twisted your head off or struck you down with a burning fever. She is the ultimate deadly pop quiz. Cultural geographers studying these beliefs map them onto the landscape, arguing that the spirit world is a cognitive map of ecological zones and their associated dangers. The Leshi is the forest, the Rusalka is the river, and the spirits don't stop at the edge of the wild. Even your own home would not be your own. In the rafters would live the domovoi, the hairy ancient guardian of the household. As long as you left him offerings of milk and bread, he would be your protector. But insult him, and he would become a poltergeist, hiding your keys and rattling your pans. In the bathhouse, the bannock would lurk, a far more malevolent spirit who had to be appeased with offerings of soap and fir branches, lest he suffocate you in the steam. You realize you have survived just one small corner of a world saturated with intelligent, powerful, and demanding spirits. You're suddenly very glad you only got lost in the woods, navigating the complex territorial politics between the forest god and the river goddess. sounds utterly exhausting. With this final, humbling thought, you take the last step. Your boot makes a flat, dead sound on the asphalt. The air smells faintly of tar and exhaust. The spell is broken. The ancient world is behind you. You stand on the road, a stark line between two worlds. The forest is behind you, a silent, living wall of green and shadow. Ahead of you, the road is empty and mundane. The shift is jarring. Your experience in the woods feels like a vivid, terrifying dream, and the solid asphalt under your feet is the unwelcome morning alarm. But does a being like the Leshi simply vanish when you step onto pavement? Does he cease to exist in a world of satellites and science? Or does he just adapt? The great intellectual shift of the 18th century, the Age of Enlightenment, was dedicated to chasing spirits like the Leshi out of the world with the bright, clean light of reason. And yet, he lingers. In the most remote villages of Poland, Ukraine, and Russia, you can still find old people who speak of him not as a fairy tale, but as a simple fact of nature. They might not call him a god, but they know who is responsible when a traveler goes missing in the woods for a few hours and returns confused and disheveled. The woodsman was just having a bit of fun. In our modern globalized world, he has found a new identity. He has become a cryptid, a Slavic cousin to Bigfoot or the Yeti. Sociologists and psychologists continue to debate whether modern cryptid sightings are a new folk process creating new myths, or a symptom of a disenchanted world actively seeking to re-enchant itself. Whatever the cause, the accounts persist. A hiker in the Carpathian Mountains sees a figure that is too tall, too thin, that seems to melt into the trees. A hunter in the Siberian taiga finds a set of enormous, unidentifiable footprints and feels a wave of pure, directed dread that forces him to retreat. These witnesses are not medieval peasants. They are modern people with cameras and GPS, and they are seeing something that their rational world cannot explain. He is the original master of social distancing, preferring to be glimpsed at the edge of vision, a dark shape that defies easy categorization. You can imagine it easily. You are driving down this very road at dusk. Your headlights cut a tunnel through the darkness. For just a second, a figure is illuminated at the side of the road. You think it's a man, but the proportions are wrong. The arms are too long. It seems to be covered not in cloth, but in something rough and shaggy like bark. You slow down, look again, and there is nothing there but an oddly shaped tree stump, a trick of the light. But the image is seared into your brain, and a cold feeling settles in your stomach. You start to walk along the road, the hard surface jarring after hours on the soft forest floor. You glance over your shoulder, back at the tree line, one last time, and for a fraction of a second you see him, or you think you do. Deep in the shadows between two pines there is a tall, dark shape, utterly still. It is unidentifiable, a trick of the light, a figment of your exhausted imagination. It has to be. But in that instant you feel a final faint echo of that ancient watchful presence. The guardian, seeing you off his property. You blink and the shape is gone. There is only the forest, silent and secretive, keeping its oldest resident well hidden. You blink, and the dark shape in the trees is gone. It was nothing. It had to be nothing. You turn your back on the forest for the final time. The road stretches before you, a straight gray line of human certainty imposed on a wild landscape. You are physically and emotionally exhausted. Your clothes are muddy and torn, and your skin is crisscrossed with fine, stinging scratches from your earlier panic. You feel a profound sense of psychological whiplash. The mundane world rushing back in with an almost surreal intensity. A discarded plastic bottle glinting in the grass by the roadside seems more alien than the moss-bearded man you met hours ago. Your ordeal may be over, but the departure has its own set of rules. The parting of ways must be done correctly. The most important rule, a law in myths across the world, from Orpheus to Slavic folklore, is that you must not look back. You have been released. To look back now would be to show doubt, to question the pact, to invite the forest to pull you back into its embrace. You have had your last look. Now you must only walk forward. There is also a taboo on speaking. Psychologists analyzing liminal experiences suggest the brain needs time to integrate a reality-shattering event before it can be articulated. The folklore puts it more simply. If you speak of your encounter too soon before you are fully back in the human world, the Leshi might snatch the words from your mouth, leaving you with a stutter for the rest of your life. You feel this instinctually. You could not begin to explain what happened even if you wanted to. The words are not there yet. Sorry I'm late. I was being held captive by a Slavic forest deity as a tough sell to a skeptical world. And you must not take anything with you. The concept of obrok, a tribute or tax paid by peasants to their lords, was a cornerstone of life in old Russia. Everything belongs to someone and a price must be paid for its use. The same applies here. The forest is the Leshy's property. You instinctively check your pockets. You find a smooth gray stone, perfectly shaped like a teardrop, that you must have picked up without thinking. It feels warm to the touch. It is beautiful, but it is not yours. To take it would be theft, and the Leshi would surely come looking for it, bringing endless misfortune to your home. You walk to the edge of the road, and with a quiet murmur of thanks, you place the stone gently on the grass. A final, respectful offering. A payment for your passage. You begin to walk. The first few minutes are silent. The only sound your own weary footsteps on the pavement. Then a car rushes past with a roar of wind and engine, its driver oblivious to the ancient world you just escaped. You pull out your phone. A single bar of service has appeared. A moment later, it connects. The screen lights up with notifications, a flood of meaningless data from a world you had completely forgotten. The device, so useless before, now feels like a talisman of your own civilization. The sun is low in the sky. You have a long walk ahead of you, but for the first time in what feels like an eternity, you know exactly where you are going. The road is long and the twilight is deep, but ahead you finally see them. The warm yellow lights of a small town, a comforting constellation of human safety. The journey is over. As you walk that final mile, the adrenaline and fear finally recede, leaving behind a profound and quiet awe. You are replaying the encounter in your mind, trying to assemble the contradictory pieces of the being you met. He was a monster who hunted you with your own hopes, a trickster who laughed at your panic, a king who presided over his kingdom with absolute authority, and a guide who answered a humble plea. He was not one of these things. He was all of them. He is the forest. You think of the ancient Slavic practice of zagavory, spoken magical charms used to heal or protect. Your simple, desperate words spoken over that granola bar were a form of that, an improvised incantation, a plea sent into a world that still listens to such things. Phenomenologists might argue that the Leshi is just a name for the overwhelming psychological state of being lost, a dissolution of the ego into the vast, terrifying indifference of nature. And perhaps they are right. But what you felt was not indifference. It was a personality, a will, an ancient, lonely, and powerful consciousness. You will carry this experience with you. A simple walk in the park will never feel the same. You will notice the way the moss grows on the trees. You will listen more closely to the whisper of the wind. And you will feel a flicker of understanding when you see a dark shape at the edge of your vision. You have walked through a living myth, and some small part of it will now walk with you forever. Some stories say that if a Leshi grows fond of a person, he will occasionally leave them gifts at the forest's edge. A rare mushroom, a beautiful feather. You don't expect any such gifts. The gift was the journey itself, and the safe return. As you reach the first streetlight, its familiar orange glow washing over you, you feel one last thing. It is not a sound or a sight. It is a faint, distant feeling, a final silent pressure at the back of your mind. It is not the feeling of being watched. That is gone. This is a feeling of being acknowledged. It is a parting of ways, a nod of farewell from the shy, mossy, gentle guardian of the Slavic forests. The door to his world is closing behind you. He is turning back to his duties, to his family, to his long autumn sleep, and you are returning to yours. A warm meal, a soft bed, and the strange, difficult task of living in a world that suddenly seems much, much bigger and more mysterious than you ever thought possible. And so your journey is at its end. You have walked the ancient paths and listened to the whispers on the wind. You faced the forest's master and learned the old rules, the forgotten courtesies that allow a person to pass through a world so much older than our own. You felt the deep, unsettling magic of a place where paths vanish and the trees themselves have eyes, and you found your way back not with a map or a compass, but with a humble gift and a quiet show of respect. You are safe now, far from that deep and shadowed wood. The road has led you home, and the memory of the Leshi is already beginning to soften, changing from a terrifying ordeal into a strange and wondrous story that now belongs only to you. The chill of the forest air is fading, replaced by the comfortable warmth of your own quiet room. The rustling leaves are now just the gentle hum of a fan, and the glowing green eyes of the forest spirit are nothing more than the faint, comforting lights of some distant electronic device. There is nothing to fear here. You are home, you are safe, and it is time to rest. Let the last vestiges of the ancient woods drift away, and allow the gentle pull of sleep to draw you down into a quiet and peaceful dark. Sweet dreams.